Welcome to another episode of A Brother with Questions. I am your host, B. Period. Man, how y'all doing out there today, man? Please go like and subscribe to the channel. That is how we grow, man. The more subscribers, the bigger we get, the more we get this message out of there, man, or out of here. Man, I sure appreciate y'all for listening. Today, we're going to do a reaction video today for today's episode of the podcast. And so you can see in the clip, I got a clip of the Breakfast Club up. This is the episode where they had Larry Elder on the show. And I know who Larry Elder is. I have sort of watched his career from afar and have always appreciated what he had to say. But the way he was on the Breakfast Club on this interview, whoo! I've been watching a lot, man. A lot of people say he was cooking. So I'm not gonna stay their terms, but Larry Elder was saying some things that I felt like this is what we needed to be talking about. This is what we needed to be talking about. And I appreciate it. I appreciate the source because so often one of the criticisms that you hear about Black conservatives, and for those that didn't know, Larry Elder is a Black conservative, but one of the criticisms you hear is they don't seem to be concerned about the community. And I've always argued I don't think it's not that they aren't concerned about community. I just think that the way they express it is different from the way, in this case, the way the Breakfast Club expressed it. But I would say it's very different from what traditionally Black people would talk about. But to say he didn't care or to say it's not on top of his mind, come on, man. Come on. But here, man, I'm gonna let y'all listen, man. We're gonna get into it. I'm gonna take some pauses here and there. I'm gonna let it run for a little bit as well. But take this ride with me as we listen to this Larry Elder interview on the Breakfast Club. Here we go, man.
Radio host for 40 years.
Author, TV host.
Author, New York
host.
Times best-selling list. Got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Okay.
Corner of Hollywood and Vine, Southeast corner, just saying.
Okay. I know you got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah,
Larry.
about a handful of radio guys do, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, I think it's you, Elvis Duran,
Angie
Howard
Martinez.
Stern,
Yeah.
Big Boy. Oh,
Ar-
Angie
Angie Martinez.
A guy named Arthur Godfrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Now-
let's jump right into it. Why are you running for president?
Well, I'm running as an America First mega guy, and we have an America First mega guy running, obviously. So the question is, what do you bring to the table?
You said MAGA.
MAGA.
Okay.
And the answer is, I bring a lot of issues to the table that I feel our side is not talking enough about, if at all. For example, the number one social problem in America by far is the epidemic, not of COVID, but of fatherlessness. 70% of Black kids today enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. Now 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother. And the stats are...
So he's gonna say some stats, but I just want to pause right there. 70% are growing up without a father in the home. And he said he wants to address the number one issue: fatherless households. Come on. If you can't get with Larry Elder on just the idea that he's out here concerned that family seems to be the biggest problem facing this country right now, especially when we're talking about Black folk, come on, man. If you can't get behind that, what we doing? This is the problem. This is the source of, in my opinion, I would say 70% of what's happening in the Black community right now. I think we can flip all or the majority of the issues that we see simply by getting back to a time where marriage was way more important. Marriage was held to a high standard. People were actually committed to one another. And then raising children with a standard that they had to meet. I'm gonna let them keep cooking though.
If you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happened? In the mid-60s, with I think the best of intentions, a Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And since then, we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. When I say this to people, the pushback I get is, well, there are lots of things that are going on, systemic racism, poverty. Here's the problem. If you look at a young Black male aged 10 to 43, that's young to me because I'm 71 years old. A young Black man in that demo is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same demo. Young Black man, real young, 19 and under, the number one cause of preventable death is homicide, almost always at the hands of another young Black male. Same demo for whites, the number one cause of preventable death is unintentional deaths. That includes drug overdoses, automobile accidents, drownings. It's not until they get to number 4 that death is the cause. In America, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides are committed by Black people, often against other Black people. Of the homicides in this country, half of them are Black victims, almost all killed by other Blacks. How do you explain that if it isn't for the absence of fathers?
To me, those stats are, I'm blown away by the stats, simply because, so often we talk about what the police are doing. So often we talk about systemic racism. And I know that there are individuals within neighborhoods that are focused on some of the issues that Larry Elder's discussing here. But why don't we place a higher threshold on that within the community? Like, why isn't that the first conversation we have about what's going on in the community? Because, in all honesty, I'm not one to argue that historically systemic racism has been a problem in this country. You're never going to get me to say that is not true. But I also think it's true that things like providing opportunities for children within Black neighborhoods, that we argue the opportunities aren't there, but creating those opportunities, I don't think that's a function of the government per se. I think that is a function of Black people to create those opportunities within the neighborhoods that we're coming from. Again, I go back to, the people who generally speaking raise themselves out of those neighborhoods and those poverty-stricken situations. How often are those same people going back to their neighborhoods? And I'm not talking about doing turkey drives, because a lot of them do the turkey drives. I'm not talking about providing book bags and pencils and things, because a lot of them do that too. But how often are we creating systems through our own money? And again, one of the things that most people who have money realize is that there's more resources than they thought were available. So not only through your own money, but through other outside resources to provide and create opportunities within these poverty-stricken neighborhoods, as we like to call them, so that the kids don't feel like the only option that they have is to, pick up a bag of drugs, pick up a gun, and then quote unquote defend themselves or defend their quote unquote neighborhoods against somebody else. Why aren't we doing that? Why are we solely focused? It seems like we're solely focused on what the government isn't doing or what white people have done to us historically. When, truth be told, the majority of Black people today, other than, I would argue, those who go into the private sector in some way, shape, or form, but for those in entertainment, you're sole source for the most part. All your millions of dollars are coming from the very white people that you say are the problem. And that's fine. Take their money. I'm not telling you not to. But now why not funnel that money back to these same neighborhoods that you say or we say have a problem? The solutions are not coming from outside. Nobody's going to care about our neighborhoods more than we do. And until we start funding the solutions, that's the cycle. Let's keep going.
Prepared to say Black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime? I doubt it. And the go-to reaction often is poverty and systemic racism. Here's the problem. 1940, when there was blatant racism, this is before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Civil Rights Act of 64, KKK was still alive and well, 87% of Blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%. You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and neither side is talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they caused it with the welfare state, and our side does not talk about it because if you're white, you'll be accused of dissing single moms who are heroically raising these kids, or you'll be accused of being a racist, or if you're Black, you'll be accused, as I was by the LA Times, of being the black face of white supremacy. Nobody's talking about that. I am.
What are the reasons, if your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
As I said, it's because in the mid-60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. In Charlemagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites. In 1965, 8% of whites entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. Now it's about 25%, also up threefold. Look at census data, 1910, 1920, 1930, in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Philadelphia, a young Black kid was slightly more likely to be brought into a world with a father in the home married to the mother than a young white kid. We have incentivized this kind of bad behavior, and it's had a disproportionately bad effect on the Black community.
Let me ask you a question.
Let's pause right here. I love that line right there that Charlemagne said, though. He said, what did white people do wrong? There's a problem. There is a problem. Larry Elder is here. You asked him a question about what was happening in the Black community and the reasons why that's happening in the Black community. And your question was, well, what do white people do wrong? That's the point, Charlemagne. It ain't white people. White people are not the cause of the problem. White people are not out here forcing Black people not to get married. White people are not out here forcing Black people to not develop mature relationships with each other. That's not a white problem. There's no white man going, hey, I see y'all looking like y'all love each other. We can't have that. Stop that right now. I mean, what are we talking about? That has nothing to do with white people. There is something that has happened within the community that we no longer value marriage. We no longer value long-term relationships. So my question is, why is that? Why is it that we don't have a place of value on that anymore? Which is so interesting. Because generally speaking, you'll notice in poverty neighborhoods, the rate of single mothers seems to be higher. But once you start getting out of that poverty or close to poverty tax bracket, once you get into the middle class tax bracket, you see an increase in families. So if I'm analyzing, just looking at the numbers, I'm thinking it has to do something with culture. There must be a culture that, I don't want to say that is challenged or doesn't value what a marriage can do. Which is crazy to me because so many of the issues that we talk about in this community can be solved through marriage, family, structure. You know, I was looking at the numbers. The average Black man makes about, I want to say the number is about $40,000 a year. the average woman, no, 45 to about $45,000 a year. The average woman is making around $40,000 a year. If y'all were married, y'all now a household that's about 100K. Now, 100K is not going to, obviously make you rich in the traditional sense, but 100K is going to help you establish a lifestyle that you can mimic for your kids, where they're not, where in my opinion anyway, where they don't feel like they don't have that the world is against them, because there's opportunities at that point that you can provide for them that will allow them to see the world in a bigger place, understand that the world is bigger than the 200, 300, 400 square foot apartment, 500 square foot, 1,000 square foot apartment, whatever it is that you may be that some of these people live in. So that that kid now is on a trajectory to do better than you. And so maybe you made 50 grand and that was where you tapped out as a mom or a dad, and together y'all made 100,000. But now, because of the opportunities that you gave them, now they graduate college and get a job making 90 grand. And so already they're doing better than you guys. So that by the time they make it to your age, if they just stay on the trajectory that they're on, they're already going to be more successful than you. But if 70% of us are living in single parent households where the median income is 40 grand, marriage solves a lot of those problems. But that goes back to relationships. How good are our relationships? How good are we at being committed to one another? Because anybody who's been married knows one thing for sure. Marriage is work. Marriage is harder than the job that I do. Shoot, marriage is harder than all the jobs that I do. It's work. It takes effort to love someone for 50 years. And in that love, there will be ups and downs a part of that love. But that love is what brings you in the door. And that commitment that you have to work on continuing that love is what lasts for 50 years. A lot of our problems is we don't have a commitment. We need happiness today, and if we can't get that happiness in a year, we out. We see it in how we even do work. The average person is expected to work 3 or 4 jobs by the time they're done. It used to be the average person would stay in the same place for 40 years. Commitments are an issue today. So much of it, man. White people. Man, we can stop ever talking about white people and the problems white people did to us. Man, we'd be so much further along, in my opinion. Let's keep going.
Larry Elder.
What do you mean? What do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe there's
No, there
systemic
used to
racism?
be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'll probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of Black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family. There's a direct.
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a Black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married Black man to a Black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and Black people do that. And when I ask you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the Black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was a Black. I think most of those who were doing this were Black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad just as you're raising your own children, I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. Mm-hmm. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone reelected a black president. The three biggest cities in America are New York, Chicago, LA. They all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlemagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed. And he said, I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time. Mm-hmm. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the three largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious organization of doctors, the American Medical Association, would have 2 black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have 2 black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop, which is a speech he gave right before he got assassinated, the day before. And now we act as if Barack Obama never even got elected. And we're still talking about systemic racism. It's not fair.
Yeah, I'm stats. Hey, they weren't ready. They were not ready. They were not ready. They were not ready. Here's the thing. Here's my summary of all of that, because I'm not, we heard it. That's my other frustration, man. We keep talking about 2023 as if it's a 1960, as if we've made zero progress in this country, as if black people are not, at least at a greater level, killing this game, whatever you want to call this game. And I'm frustrated because there's progress is slow. I mean, to think we started in a place where we're, number one, black people were slaves, right? So we were slaves. We were told what to do. There was no questioning anybody, right? And now we are hundreds of years later. We've gone through Jim Crow. We've gone through a time where you had segregation. We've gone through moments where the respect a black person has had to have for white people was, pretty much demanded. It wasn't quite slavery, but, don't look at me the wrong way, because it's going to be a problem. And here we are in 2023, where black people can go on any platform they want and talk for 30 minutes about how racist white people are with zero backlash. Matter of fact, most people would agree with them. And yet, we're still talking about racism holding us back. If it was that bad that it was like 1960, there's no way they'd be on television 30, 45 minutes to an hour talking about how racist white people are. If it was that bad, why didn't black people demand a different option other than Joe Biden? All Joe Biden's best friends were racist. When that man was my age, I ain't gonna tell you what I was like. All his friends was racist. And if they weren't overt racist, they certainly were doing racist things. And so, I get it. Again, he was Barack Obama's vice president. Yeah, whatever. I'm just saying, like, there has been progress. Can we stop talking about this world like progress hasn't happened? Like we aren't, or our opportunities are still so limited. I mean, I look at a guy like Charlemagne. Charlemagne went to, he obviously works for iHeartRadio. He went to iHeartRadio. He had an idea about starting a whole podcast network. I don't know how the business works for it, but from everything he said, they are in some part funding his network. Last time I checked, iHeartRadio was owned by white people. So white people are funding your idea of basically putting on a bunch of black people who pretty much are very convinced that white people are racist, or there is at least systemic racism, and that as a collective, while they may or may not understand how they participate in systemic racism, they are a part of the problem. And yet they still put up whatever they put up to allow you to put as many people on as you want who will gladly tell them how they are a part of the problem. Come on, man. And there ain't been progress? Come on, man. I want to jump up. I want to jump around a little bit here. I'm going to speed for it, man. I'm not going to do this whole video, but the way Larry Elder was cooking on these fools today, man, it was amazing to me just to listen to how he broke down all of their arguments with sound doctrine, statistics, stats. He wasn't in his feelings. Man, if we could just get out of our feelings sometimes. Let's keep going, man. Let's take a listen.
The candidate in this race is a multimillionaire. He's offered a $20 gift certificate if you give $1. Another one is offering a free, air quotes, country western concert if you give $1. Another one is giving you a commission if you are a prospective donor to go out and get other prospective donors. It seems to me that corrupts the whole process. I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, Charlemagne. I'm asking people to support me and go to my website, LarryElder.com, and give me at least $1. If I get $1 from 40,000 individuals, I will be up on that stage in Milwaukee on August 23. And when I get up there, game on, hold my beer.
So why is this system? Is this system holding you back?
Go ahead.
Would you say it's a system holding you back?
I would say it's unfair. It seems to me this early, the voters ought to decide this. I mean, in 2016, there were 17 or 18 Republican candidates. Now there's 13. Somehow, some way, our republic survived.
So here, Larry Elder, I kind of started in the middle of the clip because I'm really looking for something else, but he's talking about the challenge he's had in being able to get on the debate stage, which is going to be happening within the next week here. And one of the things he's talking about is the fundraising part. And so he's on the Breakfast Club to try and encourage people to go donate to his campaign. What did he say? LarryElder.com, I believe. And he's looking to get at least 40,000 people to donate $1. So that's what he's talking about right now. So if you like what Larry Elder is saying, man, please, I say go do it. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to put up $1. That's all it takes to make sure the man is on the stage. I can put up $1. I can do that, Larry. I got you. Let's keep going. Don't you hate it when your internet be messing up on you sometimes?
We could survive with 13 candidates. I don't know why they have all this rule to eliminate certain people at this point. But rather than
those systems can hold you back no matter how hard you work, right?
I'm going to say, but rather than whine about it, my goal is to get on as many shows as I can, like yours. Urge people to go to LarryElder.com, give at least $1, even if you want somebody else. Don't you think it's wise for us to talk about the epidemic of fatherlessness, the lie that America remains systemically racist, and the need for school choice? 13 public high schools in Baltimore, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Are you kidding me? 53 public high schools in Chicago, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is opposed to school choice, while the party elites, whether it's Barack Obama or Gavin Newsom or Joe Biden, have their own kids in private school. It is wrong, and we need to talk about that.
Larry Elder, why would
that is wrong. Why do we hate school choice so much? I still don't understand fundamentally why most black people are so opposed to school choice. The idea is there is money set aside for your student If you don't like your student situation, go get this money and use this money to go fund whatever school that you want your kid to go to, or move your kid to whatever school you want to go to. I don't understand this problem. Now, I know that they say the challenge is that, a lot of, especially when you talk about poverty people, those of us in poverty, that you talk about the idea that they don't have the abilities to get their kid and da-da-da-da-da. But that's a unique in terms of the situation. That's a personal situation. But we're not arguing against, I don't know, are we, unless we're just advocating for the fact that not all of us are able to take advantage of it. But I think the most important idea to me is the idea. The idea is to have the opportunity. Now, what you do with that opportunity is up to you, because all people can do is give you opportunities. I can give you this $100,000. I can give you an opportunity to do with it what you will, but I can't force you to do it. You're going to have to make some sacrifices to get to this $100,000 and to use it effectively. That is life. Sorry. It is what it is, right?
Somebody from our community vote for you, or why should they vote for you? Why should a Black person vote for you?
Because I'm telling the truth, and the truth oftentimes is unpleasant. It's not pleasant for me to be called the black face of white supremacy, as the LA Times did. It's not pleasant for me to be accused of being anti-black, as Tavis Smiley once called me, because I don't support reparations. By the way, Barack Obama never supported reparations. Nobody called him anti-black. We need to talk about what's going on. What's going on is the breakdown of the family. And most of the things we complain about downstream, whether it's crime or whether it's bad schools, the genesis is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and we don't talk enough about it.
Do you agree that our community is hit harder with a lot of things that you just said, whether it is racism, whether it is getting loans, whether it is getting entrepreneurship, whether it is education, whether it is all those things? You do understand that and agree with that, correct?
I do, but much of it is either self-inflicted or because of policies that we have supported, Democrats that we have supported. I wrote a book it's coming out in October. It's called As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. It's about the one-party rule in California. California has supermajorities of Democrats in the Senate and in the House. And as a result, our schools are near the bottom. People are leaving California for the very first time. We have the highest state income tax in the country. The average price of a home in California costs 175% above the national average, all because of these left-wing policies that are hurting the very people, black and brown people living in the inner city, that people on the left claim that they care about.
Do you think slavery was self-inflicted? Or do you think Jim Crow segregation was self-inflicted? Or do you think,
slavery was self-inflicted? Of course, it wasn't self-inflicted, but there are a lot of people have bloody hands in slavery. Mm-hmm. For example, slavery could not have existed had it not been for African chieftains who were selling black slaves.
Real quick, I was just gonna say something. Jim Crow as a system has probably been, in my opinion, out of place for, I know some people would say, I'm going to say 30 years. I'm going to give you 30 years. So in 30 years, what's the problem? We're looking for progress. We're not looking for perfection, because we're never going to achieve perfection. We're looking for progress. And so in 30 years, you're telling me, and quite honestly, I really say I would go 50, 60 years, but I know how some people think. 30 years. And I go back to, let's go back, right? People who were born in the 70s didn't have the opportunities. People born in the 80s, okay, didn't have the opportunities. People born in the 90s, some people say didn't have the opportunity. People born in 2010, people born in 2020, you telling me they ain't got the opportunities? They don't have the opportunity. You telling me a kid born in 2020, who is 2020, who would be not 2020, 2010, who would be 13 now? So they're in school. They're for the most part, and that obviously is going to depend on location. That plays a big difference. But in terms of opportunity, you're telling me that kid doesn't have opportunity. You're telling me that kid doesn't have access to college, trade school if they don't want it. Are we really saying that this 13-year-old kid, you're telling me that parent didn't have access to information that would allow their kid to be successful, whether it be from the internet, whether it be from their school, whether it be from personal encouragement and the parent pouring into them. They don't have the opportunity? Come on, man. Almost every kid I know has a cell phone, which means they have access to a computer. And then in some districts across the country, they're actually giving kids laptops for daily use. They don't have the opportunities. Because even if you can't get to the library, if you got a phone, you got a whole bunch of books you can read. It's about how you use their opportunities. It's not about, at the end of the day, school is a tool that provides opportunities for you to learn. But now you have to take those opportunities, go home with those opportunities, and put them into use. If you aren't putting the tools in use at home, it's not the system's fault. That is not a failure of the system. Somebody got to take some personal accountability around here sometimes. Everything can't be the system's fault because the system can't solve every solution. The system can't solve every problem, I'm sorry. Some of us got to take personal responsibility. But I can let him keep cooking, man. Get him.
In battle or captured through raids and selling them to European and Arab slavers. It could not have existed without that. So everybody has dirty hands here. That's why reparations is such a foolish thing. If you're going to get reparations from the 5% or so of white people that have some sort of generational connection to slavery, and that's all there is, then you need to go back to Africa and get money from African countries that were involved in the slave trade and in the Arab slave trade. And by the way, the Arab slave trade was even worse than the European slave trade. 90% rate of attrition, often making men and women walk on barefoot across the Sahara, and the men were castrated. Only about 5.
So if they go after the money from the other countries, then would you agree that it would be okay to go after the money from America? Is that your problem with it?
When are you going to stop with this? Everybody has a grievance. I'm answering your question. There's no end. There'll be no end to this because slavery has been part of human history from the very beginning.
Okay,
we'd be getting.
Woo! You know, it's so interesting when it comes to slavery. Again, I agree. It's America's greatest sin. That's what I would say. I would call it America's greatest sin. And when it comes to reparations, you know, I do think there's an argument for it. I tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've gone in my lifetime, I've gone back and forth about this concept of reparations. There was definitely a time where I was like, cut me a check. You know, and I've been evolving on that concept a little bit. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not necessarily ready to go keep the check. They write check, I'm gonna collect mine too. But it is the concept though that how long are we going to chase this reparations when, in my opinion, it's obvious there is no intention to get us there. And one of my biggest criticism is the types of bills that they put in place and the priority that they put on that topic in terms of pushing the efforts through. You know, I look at just a couple quick examples, right? So during Barack Obama's presidency, they for at least 2 years, right, they had the majority of the House, the majority of the Senate, and they pushed through a few things, right? That's how healthcare got through, right? But at that time, you notice how nobody was talking about reparations? Like it wasn't even a conversation on a national level, right? Soon as Barack Obama got out of office, right? He left, he did his 2 terms, he was gone. What is the first thing they started talking about? And the first thing they wanted white candidates to talk about, reparations. For 8 years. And I'm not saying black people didn't want reparations for 8 years. I knew they wanted it the whole time. But for 8 years, they did not make it a mandate to have this as a priority conversation. As soon as they left the office, though, it was a mandate. Every candidate, every white candidate needed to be talking about reparations. And if they weren't, they were a problem. And then 2020 hit, and then you know what happened in 2020. And so my challenge there is, if it was important, and Democrats are pretty much the only people that are claiming that it's important, they would have made it a priority during Barack Obama's presidency. They could have made sure they pushed that through if they really wanted to. During Biden's first 2 years, he had the majority of the House, and then he had the tying vote if they really wanted to push it, right, in the Senate. They didn't bring it. They sure, the House made the bill. We need to study it for 7 years, blah, 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 blah. But that's what they did. They made a bill to study something that Black people, Black scholars, have been studying for years anyway. So why do you need House to go do a study when there's probably 20 people that you could call tomorrow who could give you a breakdown of the research that they've done? But no. I don't need your research. I need my own. Really? No. You want to push this down the line so that it'll be a problem in another time. Quite frankly, my personal belief is, if they believed in reparations as much as they say they do, they would make a bill and then put a number on it. Because here's the truth: the number ain't never gonna be big enough. I don't care what the number is; it's never gonna be big enough. There's always gonna be a group of people that go, that ain't enough. So the number don't matter; it's the policy. So if you believe in the policy that much, put a number on it. And then go, well, we put the number and we voted the bill and da-da-da-da-da, and they turned it down. Do that. Don't tell me we need to study it some more. You don't need to study. You don't want to study. You want to study so you don't have to address the issue. So I'll get back on my reparations decisions when I believe there are politicians who truly believe in the process. But until then, I don't know why we keep having this conversation. Because these clowns don't believe in that. Come on, man.
I've let you talk, sir. I've let you talk. And every time I talk, you begin to talk, and then you say, let you finish. So I asked you a very simple question. You said, if you're going to go after it in America, go after it in Africa. So if we all agree to go after it in Africa, will you then agree to go after it in America? It's just a simple question.
No,
yes or no?
No, I won't, because it's a waste of time. We ought to be spending our time on education. Okay, you told me that I cut you off. Then I tried to answer your question. You won't let me finish.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. It's a waste of time. We ought to be talking about working hard, investing in ourselves. Right now, as we speak, there are Haitians in Haiti lining up for a lottery to come into this country. Why? Because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You can go from nothing to something faster in America than any other country in all of human history. We ought to be talking about that. Let me just, one more point. 1997, Time Magazine and CNN hooked up together to do a poll on what Black teenagers and white teenagers felt about racism. And both of them were asked, is racism a major problem in America? Both of them said yes. But then Time and CNN asked this question of the Black teenagers: is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? This is 1997. 89% of them said small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many Blacks said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism. Twice.
It was right there. Come on, man. If it's true in 1997, come on, you know what it is in 2023. It's about opportunities. When are we going to take advantage? When are we going to educate ourselves? Because a lot of the problem is, a lot of us don't even know what the opportunities are. So even when they exist, because we're not even aware that they do exist, we're not taking advantage of them. When are we going to learn the opportunities and stop talking about racism and reparations? Where are the training programs from the people who do know for the people who don't know? Because there's a whole lot more people who don't know. And in 2023, there's a whole lot of people who do know. who aren't passing that information down. Or the challenge that we see today is we see a lot of the people talking, but today we collecting checks. We like, come on down. We're gonna get information. We're gonna give you $5,000. Hey, if we're trying to make a change, somebody got to get this information for free. Truth be told, only 10% of the people you get information to anyway are going to take advantage of it. So the more times you get in front of people, the more 10% you can get, the more we can start building to grow the next generation. Because again, you can give it away for free. Ain't that many people going to take it and do something with it. But if you're just holding on to it, then even fewer are going to do anything with it. It's opportunity. That's what we're missing. That's what we need to offer. That's what we need to be focused on in our communities. Teaching opportunities. Let's go, man. Let's go. I'm gonna jump up again, man. Ooh, but he doing his thing. He doing his thing. I'm just loving this conversation that he's having with them in this particular episode. I love to, I give him credit for listening. It's clear that they don't agree with him. It's clear that they think what he's saying is, I don't know if they call it misrepresented, or I don't think you can call it uninformed. You might argue it's misrepresented. You might even argue that is not the bigger problem. But you can't deny what he's saying is true. And to me, truth is more important than how you feel. Because we can debate on how we feel about how this is affecting us. But we can't debate that truth. Let's go.
Get your evidence of that.
Oh, no,
that's a pretty serious charge.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Pretty serious charge.
Yeah.
Serious charge requires serious evidence.
Yeah.
What is your enforcement law proposal?
It is to allow states to set up commissions of retired judges and retired DAs to get rid of these soft on crime, George Soros-backed DAs that are allowing a bunch of bad people on the streets or not charging bad people to the full extent of the law. And the people that, by and large, that are hurt by these people are the very black and brown people living in the inner city. There's a Larry Krasner is a George Soros-backed DA in Philadelphia.
So real quick, so he's talking about his thoughts on law. So again, do you have to agree with what his presentation is? Is his presentation different than what most people would argue? Probably. But to say he doesn't have a solution, come on, man. He has a solution. You might disagree with what his solution is, but he has a solution. He is concerned about what's going on in the community. Again, I get it. Some people are going to go, yeah, you're just locking them up. Hey, some people need to be locked up. You know who don't go to jail very often? And I know that there's always an exception. But people who don't commit serious crime. They don't go to jail very often. People who don't commit serious crimes don't go to jail very often. How do we solve that? Stop going to jail stop committing serious crimes. You know, I even go back to judges, right? Oh, judges are always against us. They're so conservative, da-da-da-da-da. You know who doesn't get affected by conservative judges? People who don't commit crimes. The solutions. Committing crime is not a mandate because you're black. It is a choice, regardless of what color you are. It's not that you have to. It's that you choose to make different decisions. Let's go.
Philadelphia, he's been impeached, but this Philadelphia State Senate wouldn't even take up the case. We've had 2 attempts to repeal a soft on crime DA in LA County, and it hasn't gone through yet. We've got a bunch of, in my opinion, this guy, Alvin Bragg, he ran promising to get Donald Trump. And when he got in, he said the evidence wasn't there. And then one of the former DAs writes a book, accuses Bragg of giving Donald Trump a pass. And all of a sudden, he brings counts against Donald Trump. I think it's unfair.
You think members of your party are leaning toward fascism?
Define fascism.
Authoritarianism.
Define fascism.
I mean, the rejection of democracy, the rule of law, and equal rights under the law in favor of a strong man, Donald Trump, who interprets the popular will.
No, I don't. There was a long article about Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, a Black conservative, still alive, 95 years old. And he wrote a piece.
If you don't know who Thomas Sowell is, go check him out, man. Thomas Sowell, I love the way he breaks down just politics, economics, things happening within the Black community. The man has a lot to say. And a lot of the things that you'll find online tend to be older, but the same concepts apply even in 2023. Shout out to Thomas Sowell.
In which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production.
Mm-hmm.
Fascism is when the government allows you to own means of production, the government tells you what to do. And he said, frankly, technically, people like Barack Obama are fascists. That is to say, these are left-wing people telling you how to run your business, telling you what to sell, telling you what you can't sell. For example, in California, we have a governor named Gavin Newsom, who recently said by the year 2035, no more sale of new gas-powered cars. How dare you? Most people don't want an EV. They like their own gasoline-powered cars, but now you're telling car dealerships they can't even sell them? What do you call that?
But what about, when you tell women what to do with their bodies?
Well, notice how they didn't address that one. Because at the end of the day, he wants to get to his point. You know what I'm saying? You don't even want to, that man just explained fascism to you. Let's call it fascism for dummies. Gave you an example of a democratic fascism. You're like, oh, we don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about how. Oh.
That is a moral issue. I happen to be pro-life, and I believe that that abortion is a sin. That's not telling women what to do with their body. That's expressing my opinion about whether or not it is right or it is wrong. For example, there is a guy right now behind bars in Philadelphia named Dr. Kermit Gosnell. Mm-hmm. He is an abortion doctor who performed late-term abortions. When I ask people who consider my position to be extreme, I ask them, tell me at what point do you believe pregnancy has gone so far that to terminate the unborn would be homicide, and almost nobody will give you an answer. So in other words, what you're really telling me then is this guy, Dr. Kermit Gosnell, should be set free. He's a political prisoner. He was persecuted unfairly. If you won't tell me when you think at what point a pregnancy cannot be terminated unless it's homicide, then to me you're essentially allowing women to kill the unborn, no matter how old that unborn is. And I think that's wrong. The other thing, Charlamagne, real quickly on this issue. It'd be one thing if the pro-life community was not talking the talk and walking the walk. But there are literally thousands of pregnancy centers all over America, whether it's funding for adoption services, funding for housing, funding for education, funding for job training, to let women know they have alternatives. And every state will decide this. The government shouldn't be passing some sort of law one way or the other regarding abortion. Every state's going to decide that. I'm in California, which is a deep blue state. There have been 2 initiatives to restrict abortion. I voted in favor of them. I was overwhelmingly defeated. And when abortion has been put on the ballot in recent years, the people that wanted abortion restrictions have lost. Mm-hmm. The American people pretty much have said first-term abortions, they want them to be legal.
I just love the way that he is spitting facts, truth. So, this is where I'm going to kind of wrap up my view and my reaction. But his first point was just talking about abortion. One of the arguments that I've made is when the Supreme Court said it's basically a state issue. People are still arguing that, women have lost their right to have an abortion. I personally don't feel like anybody's lost their right to have an abortion. And what they said was that it was a state issue. That means in every state, people are going to ultimately decide what the abortion law should be. And so wherever you stand on that, it's going to come up for vote. And if you don't like the way the vote goes, there's opportunities for you to influence, change, amend, whatever decisions are made. And so this idea that you've lost it, you haven't. The only way you're lost is if when the issue comes up, you choose not to vote. Then quite frankly, you have lost because they gave you an opportunity to speak your piece and you chose not to. As I close though, my biggest point in everything that Larry Elder had to say, it all goes back to family. All goes back to family. There's just a couple stats I want to say, if you don't mind. I did some research, right? Looking at marriage within the U.S. 51%, it says, of the U.S. is married. Cool. That's overall. When you look at Asians as a group, 61%. So they're higher than that. When you look at whites, 55%, higher than the average. When you look at Hispanics, 48%, close to the average. Black people, 31%. You see it? 31%. We are 30 points below the highest, 20 points below the average. And we're looking for the solutions. There's usually a set of values that comes along when you have a man and a woman in a household who have a unified plan. Even amongst the poorest of us, there's usually a unified plan that takes their children greater than they were. You know, my father tells me a story about one of his brothers. He said his brother was poor as poor. That's how he described it. Whatever that means. Had 11 kids. But they raised 11 kids who all graduated from college and achieved some level of what you probably would describe as the American dream. But what did they come from? They came from less than what the average American has today. Because they didn't grow up in a big city. They grew up in the country. In the country. So I look at a kid today who grows up in a middle-class family and claims once they get old enough that they didn't have opportunity. Are you kidding me? No opportunities. Family, marriage, structure. Where would we be if that became the standard again? Marriage, family, structure. I'm going to stop right there, man. I appreciate y'all for listening. We went long today. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, go check out the full video if you like. He did a great job, in my opinion. Said a lot of things that needed to be said. Please like, subscribe to the channel, comment. Tell me what you think. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think everything I said was trash. Cool. Let's talk about it. Put it in the comments, man. I appreciate y'all, man. B period, man. I'm out.